Hey folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. We have a cool panel discussion with you today, and we have a really cool lineup of folks here who have something unique, all connected by the fact that they've all either worked in a music store or a record store. And today, I just thought it would be an interesting thing, or maybe somebody slipped in and they haven't, but I'm sure because we talk about music so much, I'm sure somebody who slipped in hasn't worked at a record store. It's probably been to enough record stores where they have some cool stories. The idea today was just to have a fun discussion just about people's experiences and working at a record or a music store, and just maybe some interesting stories, or maybe a celebrity came in and bought a guitar, or maybe just some cool stories about albums that were huge when they came, or albums that didn't sell, or, you know, these folks have the experience. So I'm going to pass it on to them, and I'm going to let them share about their experiences, anything they want to talk about, anything cool, or any experiences that they had working in a record or music store. And we are the Contrarians. How's everybody doing?
Hello.
Good.
Right.
Good. How are you doing, Marco?
Good. This is going to be an interesting conversation. So I'm going to throw it over. And if anybody has anything to plug, feel free to plug it when you share. So like, I know Ryan, you got your channel, Ryan's Vinyl Destination. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Ryan, so you can make your little plug and you can share about your experience. Did you work in a record or a music store?
Both, and I still do part-time.
Cool. Tell us about it.
Cool. So yeah, first off, my channel is called Ryan's Vinyl Destination. It's also a Facebook and Instagram. We talk about a ton of stuff with music. We've done a series on Aerosmith that we're getting pretty close to finishing up right now. We did one on Genesis, starting one on the Police tonight, and then some other bands. And we do various other bands and subjects and smaller episodes, like we did a Joni Mitchell one, a Sly and the Family Stone one. So a ton of different stuff. And there's written reviews as well on the Facebook and Instagram, and reels of different albums I'm listening to. So make sure to check that out. So my record store experience, I started working in a record store about 5 years ago. I've done it on and off between other jobs, and I've actually worked at a couple that are considered record stores, so not just one. The place that I have been most on and off with, and I still work at now, is called Last Exit Vinyl House. It's in Kent, Ohio. And so it's also a bookstore and a cafe too, but I pretty much made it clear that I just want to do the record part because that's all I really care about. But so it's been a great experience. I mean, there's been a lot of funny times. There's been some pretty cringy moments, like people like really trying to like outduel me musically, like, oh, I bet you never heard of this one band, Led Zeppelin. I'm like, who's he? Like, just like stupid stuff like that. Like, obviously I know Led Zeppelin, but it's just funny things like that. A lot of great conversations. I've learned so much about music working in a record store, both from like customers knowing albums that I haven't heard and being like, oh yeah, that's good stuff, or just looking at different albums and choosing to check them out. For example, like a band like Magazine, great,
such a great album.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I found this one at the store that I work at, and afterward I ended up getting most of their catalog because just fantastic post-punk. Or prog, like I would not be half the prog fan I am if I hadn't gotten like a copy of Nursery Crime by Genesis there, amongst other albums. Or I've had a lot of exposure with jazz and stuff with artists like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, tons of guys like that. And it's just been a really interesting time because I'm always checking out new music. We don't really get a whole lot of metal in, actually, so it's made me a fan of so many other genres and just metal, because that's really what I grew up on and I still love it. But I've opened my eyes to funk. I got into Sly and the Family Stone because of that job. Just so much good stuff. And even in like the rock or prog genre, like albums that I just went off of the album cover, like Saga, I was like, that looks cool as hell. I'm gonna check that out. And I'm like, oh, it's a great album too.
Super album.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And now I have a ton of their catalog, but
I've met Steve Negus, the drummer from Saga.
oh, that's really cool.
He's one of my faves.
And for me, one of the coolest things about working in a record store is the deals I can get. Because on top of seeing everything and the place having pretty fair prices, I get a discount too. So, you know, I get a copy of the Velvet Underground original uncensored cover. It was priced pretty cheap. I got it for $5. Like, you know, like
Is that the
it's amazing.
stereo copy or the mono copy?
Let me stereo. You know, it's fantastic album, one of my favorites. I have pretty much their whole catalog now. Like, just because I love that band so much, and that opened my eyes. Or, you know, hearing a Vangelis album, Rest in Peace, he actually passed away today, got me into a whole different realm of like synth music. So it's just, you know, working in a record store is amazing. I mean, it makes your paycheck significantly smaller sometimes. Although you learn self-control from working in a record store too. But, you know, the people I've met, I did meet one band. There's been a couple who have come in when I wasn't there, and I'll get to that in a second. But I did meet the band The Fix because they were playing over at the Kent stage. So they came in, and I had actually listened to a few of their albums already because we always have multiple copies in the store. So when I met them, I was pretty thrilled. I mean, that's really good 80s stuff there. I did miss out on meeting Uriah Heep because they came in before I was working there. It was like a few months before I started, and I was just so mad because Uriah Heep's one of my favorite bands. That had me pretty mad. But yeah, the customers I've met, the connections I've made, the experiences I've had, the music I've listened to, it's just a great experience. And it's also just awesome to be able to recommend music to people. You know, you play something that's a little bit out there, and then someone comes up to you, they're like, wow, this is really cool. What is this? Recommend it to them. And then you have a whole conversation starting there. It's just a great dynamic. And that's why I still do it part-time now, even though I have a full-time job too. It's a place I can go to relax, hear some great new music, and meet other fellow music lovers.
Hey, that's really awesome, Ryan. Thanks for sharing that. Ryan's Vinyl Destination on YouTube. Cool. I'm going to throw it over to Bicycle Legs next. Bicycle Legs has their own channel as well, Bicycle Legs on YouTube. If you want to follow them, like and subscribe to them as well. And tell us about your experience working in a record or a music store.
Oh, thanks, Marco. My experience isn't so much in a record store, although it did at the end become a record store. But what my experience was as a teenager, my elder sister, who's like about 4 years older than me, so a bit more mature and what have you, she got married, and then she decided to set up a secondhand record store at our local flea market. And so we would go out there every Sunday, and she employed me to sort of do the grunt work, you know, of carrying all of, because we'd have to stock up all the crates into a big van and then drive out to the markets and then pull, you know, set up the tables, put all the crates out on the tables. And, you know, we'd start at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, so that we were ready to go by the time the markets opened, I think at 7. And so we were selling all secondhand stuff. And it was a really interesting experience. You'd meet all sorts of weird and wonderful people at the flea markets because, you know, most of the people there weren't necessarily there to buy records, but they'd still come and have a look. And they'd go through it, and they'd, you know, you'd get all the wonderful people who'd lowball you. You'd have a record for $20 and they'd say, oh, will you take $5 for it, sort of thing. And it's like, no, we won't. But you get into wonderful conversations with people who were real big music fans. And, I'd teach them about music that I loved, and they'd teach me about music that they loved. And I always found that a wonderful interaction. And originally I was getting paid by my sister, but it got to the point where I was taking the money that she was giving me, and then I was spending it on the records that she had in stock. So we eventually decided to cut out the middleman, and I got paid in records, which was wonderful for me. It was great for my collection. Probably the best thing I ever got out of that was she didn't know quite what some Beatles records were worth. And she got in stock an original mono pressing of Sgt. Pepper with the inserts and everything. And I think she only asked like $20 for it or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is a really valuable record. And she's like, well, I've marked it at $20, so you can have it for $20. And I'm like, sold.
Should ask her if she'd do it for 5.
And yeah. But I still have that record in my collection. I've still got a ton of records from that time in my collection. Eventually, she did actually try to set up a store on the campus of the University of Queensland. She rented a store space out there and had her records there. And I would occasionally go in and help out. But unfortunately, that didn't work out, and she ended up having to close the store, which was a bit sad. But yeah, it was just a really wonderful experience, because the markets, as I say, you didn't just get your sort of music fans, you got the casual buyers as well, and the casual people who would just come and have a browse and say, oh, what's this and what's that? And then, of course, the other thing we used to do, because we were a market-based thing, was we used to go out, and we were selling secondhand records, is that we used to go out to all the record fairs. And the record fairs were always a lot of fun, because you'd meet all the other dealers, and you'd set up, sort of 2 hours before the public were allowed in. And then what would happen is that all the dealers would go and look at everybody else's stalls and buy things and trade things out of them. And then you'd end up finding a record that you had in your collection for $20 that one of the dealers had picked up and realized that was much more valuable, and he'd have it in his over on his stall for $50 sort of thing. But also, you'd get to talk to so many great people who would come into these record fairs. And I remember having a discussion, a very animated discussion with one guy who was asking me about the Weird Al song Dare to Be Stupid, which is a style pastiche. It's not a parody, but it's a style pastiche of Devo. But he was absolutely convinced that it was a parody of a Devo song. And I'm like, no, it's an original song. He just wrote it in the style of Devo. And he just, it was so frustrating, because he wouldn't accept that he was wrong on this. And I'm like one of the biggest Devo fans in the world, which will probably come out in other episodes. But yeah, we had this rather animated discussion about it, I remember. But yeah, those are basically my memories of doing the markets, going to the record fairs, and eventually opening the store. So yeah, it was always wonderful. My favorite thing about it was just talking to other people about music and having that exchange of where I would sort of get them into something that they may not have heard of, and they would get me into something that I may not have heard of. And it expanded my musical outlook. And I was always wonderfully thankful for that.
Very cool. And we can find you over at Bicycle Legs on YouTube.
Yes, you can. My most recent video, I ranked the studio albums of the Beatles, which was a monumental task. And it should be out by the time this comes out. My next video that I'm going to be doing this weekend, I'm going to be doing one of my In Defense Of videos, and it is going to be a controversial one because I'm going to be defending the Genesis album Calling All Stations.
Nice. Looking forward to it.
Well, good luck
Jamie.
with that.
Oh, sorry. Jamie, I'm trying to pay attention, but I keep watching the movie in your background.
My fidelity. Thought it was appropriate.
Yeah, take it away, Jamie.
All right. It's been a long, long time since I worked at a record store. The first one I worked at was in 1989. I was 18/19, depending on the month. No, I was 19/20. Sorry. And everybody, we all grew up going, wouldn't it be fun to work in a record store? Well, I finally got that job. It was in a mall called the Northway Mall outside of Pittsburgh, probably 20 minutes from downtown. And there were only 6 of us that worked in this store in the mall. It was called National Record Mart, and they're pretty much were based in Pittsburgh. They might have sprouted out a little bit here and
There were
but
some
not-
in Columbus.
Was there? Okay.
Yeah,
Were there?
because I got a record crate from National Record Mart.
Okay. Well, about when I started there, records were phasing out. I remember at the mall, we only had like one little bin where you would find cutouts maybe thrown into the bin. That's where we kept our records, real small. So they started calling themselves NRM instead to get that record out of the name because they wanted to be fresh and new. So I worked there for at least a summer, and it was fun. I mean, there was 5 employees and the manager, and us 5 employees, we got along pretty well. We'd hang out sometimes on weekends. I remember a pool party we went to. We were kids though. It's not like we could go out bar hopping or go to happy hour or anything, but we found out ways to, my best friend at the time, his parents went away for a couple weeks and he had, what kids do. And I brought my National Record Mart gang with me to the party. So that's what I remember the most from working at record stores. The people I worked with, not more than the music, but it's pretty neck and neck. So I eventually got an apartment downtown Pittsburgh, and I was going to school. So I didn't have a car though. I couldn't take my car with me. During that summer, I had the car. So I got a job at the National Record Mart right downtown Pittsburgh in the heart of the city. And that was a big, big store. The middle part was bigger than any record store we have in Columbus. But then it had a whole section to the left that was classical. And that classical section was as big as most record stores. And then on the right, they rented movies. And that was as big as any movie rental place at the time. So this is a big place. And there was a lot of us. And I met a lot of good friends I wish I still kept in touch with today there. And we would get, we sold concert tickets. So I'd get first dibs on concert tickets. Sometimes we get free tickets. We got to meet Alice Cooper. I have a picture of me and Alice Cooper from that year, 1990. I don't know if I want to show it because I look horrendous. And people, how bad could it be? It's
Show
bad.
it.
So
Then
here's
let's
the thing.
see it.
There's something wrong when you're sitting next to Alice Cooper and you're the scary looking one. Let's see if I can do it without a glare. So, right, but it's hard to see. But you see that mullet, and it's like thinned out. It's barely grown in the back, but it's hard to see. It's bad. And I was walking around. Why don't girls like me? Well, Laszlo, cut the hair.
Damn
first of
mullet.
all, get rid of the bad mustache and grow some weight. I'm talking to the old me down here. Never mind me. Anyways, and we would party like there was no tomorrow at that store. You know what? I worked at restaurants for about 10 years, all kinds of restaurants. And there's a tightness with that group at the restaurant. It's like family, you know. That's how it was at that record store. We were tight. And there are a few stories that I cannot tell, but I was in with the music scene too, the band scene downtown Pittsburgh. There was a band that we always saw called the Zippers and the Clarks, who are still around to this day in Pittsburgh and sometimes playing to thousands of people. So they're like a Pittsburgh staple, but they were just starting out back then. And I was under 21. Sometimes it was easy for me to get in the bar, sometimes it wasn't. But I remember we went to go see the Clarks, and they said, just take our gear and walk in with us. They'll think you're with us. You're our gear guy. So that's what I did. Got in there, saw the show, drank a beer, 20 years old. Life is great, right? So there was another time when there were two ladies who came into our store who I will never forget. We had the register in the middle of the store, and the entrance to one side of the register, entrance to the other one. And the register was raised up like a little stage almost. So we looked down on the people that we cashed out. So this lady came into one entrance and walked, and there was a door to the classical section and a door to the movie section, doorway. And she walked all the way down, and it's a long store. And we got some 1990, maybe it's Slaughter. I don't know. Something's blaring, I remember. And I'm looking at this woman. I'm at the cash register, and she looks lost. And she does the horseshoe. She goes all the way to the corner, and she slowly walks up the other wall. And then she comes to me and looks up to me and says, "This isn't the drugstore, is it?" No, that is across the street. The Rite Aid is across the street. So I'll never forget that poor little old lady. And then there was real quick, a lady who yelled at me and came up with the CD box, not this album, but I have the album. And she said, "Why are you selling porn in your store?" And she was holding this up to me. I'm like, oh man, I can't remember what I said, but I'm sure I didn't agree with her.
You know what? To be fair to that first lady you were talking about, Jamie,
Yes.
the right music can have a pharmaceutical effect.
Yes. Well, if it was Muzak, I would have, been understanding. But honey, come on, you don't see any skin cream around here or anything. So there was this other lady. Now you got to remember the fashion in 1990. And she came in with a cassette. We sold a lot of cassettes. It was fun working in that store, but I tell you what, on the days you had to put cassettes away, you had to put them in those plastic things and then put them on your arm, and it hurt when they're on your arm. And putting them away in inventory, doing inventory was a bitch. I'm sure they don't have to do it these days with the computers, but going to make sure we have 3 copies of whatever, some of this crap you didn't even know what genre it was because I was 20 years old and a little naive. But this one woman came in with a cassette. It was opened, and she slapped it on the table, and it was slow. And I was doing the cash register, and there's a couple friends around me. And we're just BSing until she came in and threw her BS at me. She goes, "I don't like this cassette. I want to return it." I said, "Well, it's open. So since it's open, the only thing we can do is give you the same cassette, in exchange." "That's not how it should be." I said, "Well, it is, because people go and they tape it, and then they keep the blank tape version for themselves, and they bring this back, and that, we can't do that all the time." "No, that's not how it should be. If I don't like an item, I should be able to return it. I want my money back." And she went on and on and on. And she had this hat on like Blossom. Do you guys remember Blossom, the TV show?
Yeah.
She had this hat on, a big hat, almost like the size of 4 non-blondes, big rim, and the rim in the front was pinned up, and there was a big sunflower facing at me the whole time. And she's going off, and everyone's just listening to her go. And then she stops. And I just said, "That is the dumbest hat I've ever seen in my life." And her jaw dropped. She took her cassette and left. That's how I handled that one. But that was fun. That was so much fun, that whole place. We got into so much trouble all the time. Real quick, a buddy of mine there was working, and he got tickets to Don Henley for his friends. They knew he could get good tickets, so he got them good tickets. And then, like the day of the concert, people came in and gave everyone free tickets to the show on the lawn. And he said to me, hey, they don't know what tickets I got them. I'm going to give them the 2 lawn seats. And if you want to go with me, we'll get the 2 good seats. They're driving. They're going to pick me up here. Why don't you meet me here? Me being a stupid kid. Okay, let's do it. Well, man, we were really stupid. So great show. We're really close. And it rained. It rained on those poor people on the on the lawn. So when we meet back at their car, they noticed on the tickets. I wish I would have saw the tickets. Maybe I wouldn't have noticed. It said it didn't have a price on them. You could tell someone got these tickets for free, 0.00. And this guy didn't tell me that the chick was a psycho. So when we got back to the car, we were sitting in the back seat. I'm behind her in the passenger side, and my buddy at the time is over there, and she's punching him, yelling, I got a gun in the glove compartment. I'm gonna effing shoot you. And I'm sitting there, just get me home. Just get me home. Her boyfriend or husband or whatever was trying to calm him down, but he's like, dude, I'm never talking to you again. To him, they got me home. So there's all kinds of stories like that from that record store. It was like working in a bar. The same stories I have from working in a bar, I have later in my life, I have from that record store. And then I moved to Columbus for like a brief amount of time in late 90. And I worked at a record store in the mall downtown. I don't remember the name of the mall, and I don't remember the record store, but I think it was a chain. And then I worked at Peaches in Fort Lauderdale in 1993 for about 7 months or so.
Was it the city center and you worked at Musicland?
I think it was Musicland. It was down at the bottom.
Mike Cheney used to run that. We was the manager of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it was Musicland by the escalators downstairs. All I remember. Yeah, that's the first place I heard Empire by Queensryche. And I remember the manager telling me, oh yeah, play it. The beginning of it sounds like Alan Parsons Project. So now every time I hear it, I'm like, yeah, it does sound like Alan Parsons. Tick, 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 tick. So there you go, record stores.
Awesome. And where can we find you in general? Contrarians, Sea of
You want
Tranquility.
my address? No. You can find me here on the Contrarians. I do not have my own channels. I used to make stupid little videos way before I was on Sea of Tranquility. They suck. I don't make any more at all. I get new subscribers sometimes and go ding. They go ding. I'm like, dude, I don't make videos, but whatever. But yeah, I'm always floating around at the Sea of Tranquility. So catch me there. I got a video in a half hour. We're gonna do The Monster's Den, our favorite endings to horror movies, like those big twist endings. So that will be on. Well, I don't know when this will be on. That was on 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, at this rate, yeah. Awesome.
Right.
Give us
What
a
I
sneak
should-
peek. What's one of your endings? Just tell us the name of the movie. It won't be a spoiler because that'll probably go up before this.
All right, I'll tell you one of them. Let me look. I got all my props here. Angel Heart. I love.
Oh,
that
that's a
so
great
much.
movie.
That's an
And
excellent
the ending, I've seen it a bazillion times. It's all in theater in 1987. I'm still trying to figure out that ending. I got questions, but that's the beauty of it. It's like a puzzle. I'm always trying to figure out. I'm going to save that line for tonight. A puzzle.
And Lisa Bonet's work.
Let me write that down before I forget.
You heard it on the Contrarians first.
Well, 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Awesome.
But
Thank you, Jamie.
But Lisa Bonet's work stands to the test of time on that film.
Oh yeah, something over here stands too.
Grant, you're next.
Well, holy mackerel. What a
I
segue.
know, I know you got Grant's Rock Warehouse.
I have Grant's
Um,
Rock Warehouse
and I'm gonna-
because I had to have something to plug and I didn't have anything to plug. So now I have something to plug.
I'm gonna throw it over to you, but no mustache hate, okay?
Did I? Who's hating mustache?
No, Jamie made a comment about his old stupid mustache. So
Oh, mine
Marco,
was a stupid.
No one can wear a
mustache.
stash like you. You're fine.
thank you.
Very few people can pull that off, Marco. Just the stash. You know, you got Bill Cower, Tom Selleck, only Burt Reynolds. You're right up there with those three.
Thank you.
Burt Reynolds and Tom Selleck, you're in good company.
Awesome. Take it away, Grant.
All right. Well, Grant's Rock Warehouse, and house is spelled Haus. So, you know, whatever. You can find me on the YouTube. But tonight, Ryan and I we're doing a police video on his station, on his channel. It could be a station, for Christ's sake. And we're looking at Outlandos d'Amore and Regatta de Blanc. So that'll be a panel discussion. Tomorrow night on Peter Kerr's channel, Rock Daydream Nation, Peter and I are doing a joint venture and we're interviewing Prescott Niles of the Knack. So we're doing that tomorrow at 7. Oh, things are happening here. So we're doing that. On John Clauser's channel on Saturday, we're looking at Love Coma, which I have not listened to yet, but I'll have to rally and get that together. I don't know who's all doing that. Ryan might be on that. Peter, oh, Todd's on there. All right, here we go. And then Todd and I, calm down, Teddy. Todd and I have been doing a series on Matthew Sweet. So coming on Wednesday, the 25th, we're going to be looking at the Matthew Sweet albums Inside and Earth. And we're going to do like a compare and contrast and talk about what we like and what we don't like.
Grant, Spoonful today had a original pressing of 100% Fun for sale.
Oh, I've
Pretty
already
cheap,
got
too.
that. I've already got that. I'm hardcore. Jamie.
On
You have
vinyl,
no
you got it on vinyl?
Of course.
Okay.
Original pressing. You
All
got it. Crap. Now what was I talking
Sorry, I took you out of your rhythm.
and I barely have any rhythm at all. So anyway, Todd and I, okay, that'll take Todd and I probably a year to go through all the records because there's 15 albums but it'll be good. So I'm looking forward to that. But there are plenty more things coming up. I mean, Ryan's he's like a machine as far as content goes. So, but anyway, tomorrow I'm really looking forward to the whole Knack thing. Peter said, well, I'll just kind of handle it. You can jump in when you want. I'm just surprised that he was able to get somebody lined up. And I just feel great that I'm part of it. So anyway, that's basically what's coming up. There's so much crap coming up. It's amazing. I, however, did not work in a record store, but I did work in a guitar store from like 83 to 88 in Marion, Ohio. So there was a lot that we've done. There was a lot of people that came in, and not anybody really recognizable other than Rick Nielsen. But I did go to several NAMM shows in Chicago, the NAMM show in 86 and 87. And I was able to meet John Entwistle, Bruce Kulick, Paul Dean of Loverboy. I know you guys are just all giddy about that one. I'm pretty sure that, well, who was the guitar? I don't want to say Yingwei. Help me. The guy who played guitar in Dio.
Vivian Campbell.
Vivian Campbell was there. And I got like a poster and he signed it and everything. I never mounted it or I got it in the closet, but yeah, Vivian Campbell was there. And I think he was there for, it might've been for DiMarzio pickups if I'm not right. God. But all I remember is Vivian Campbell's very short. So what I do remember, not very tall guy, but he was there, saw Lee Rettenauer. At the NAMM show back in those days, they would have a concert. So it was kind of off campus. It wasn't anywhere like near the facility where they had it. But I remember going upstairs and my buddy and I who worked at the record store, at the guitar store, we went upstairs and we were coming up and Lee Rettenauer was coming downstairs and my buddy almost ran into him and knocked him down the stairs. Would have been embarrassing, but it was great. But my claim to fame, I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. But my claim to fame was in 1986 at the Marion Popcorn Festival, Cheap Trick played the Popcorn Festival. A guy that was part of the Popcorn Festival in Marion called up the store and said, "Hey, you guys still open?" I said, "Yeah, we're open to 7. What's up?" He said, "Well, I have someone I want to bring down." I said, "Okay." I didn't know what it was. So anyway, he brings him down. It's Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, because Rick Nielsen's a big guitar collector. He's looking for anything he can find. So he brings him down. Of course, I'm a big Cheap Trick fan. I was like losing my shit, but I was keeping it together. But I was pretty excited because, I've been a Cheap Tricks fan since I was a kid. So he brings him in. Rick Nielsen runs into the guitar store like he owns the place. Goes in, goes clear to the back room where we gave guitar lessons, looking for everything he could possibly look for. It was funny. I said, "Well, Rick, just go for it. Just, look what you want to look for." But in the meantime, I had a guitar that I owned, was this 1961 Gibson Les Paul Jr. Now, if you know what a 1961 Gibson Les Paul Jr. looks like, it looks like an SG, which is the guitar that Angus Young plays. Now, originally when those came out, they were called Les Pauls. In 61, they were still Les Pauls. In 62, when Les pulled the endorsement deal, they became SGs. So I had a 61 Les Paul Jr. and Rick Nielsen goes, "I'll give you $400 for that. Bring it down to the stage downtown, and I'll let you hang out and you can watch the concert from backstage, blah, blah, blah. And I'll pay you $400 after the gig." And I said, "Well, of course, now, if you think about it, this was 86. A 1961 Les Paul Jr. is worth a little bit more now than $400. It would probably be a $4,000, $5,000 guitar, I would imagine, maybe $3,000, it depends. So, but then $400, I go, well, Rick Nielsen's going to get it. Good with that, So anyway, so I think they started playing at 7. So we hooked up with the road manager. They let us back in. And I brought the owner of the guitar store and his wife with me, and we went and hung out. So we got to hang out backstage. And I remember at that time talking to Bunny Carlos. Now, at that time, Dream Police was just about to be released on CD. And I had Standing on the Edge CD, and I had something else I brought with me, but I can't remember what it was. But I already had Standing on the Edge, so I brought it with me. And I have the CD, but it's not here because I didn't know I was going to have to talk about this. So I had the CD, the band signed it. I talked to Bunny Carlos a little bit about record collecting because he's a big record collector. And he was saying, "Yeah, Grant, Dream Police will be out next week." I said, "Oh, I know all about it, blah, blah, blah." But anyway, I had the band sign the insert of the CD and everything, and sold the guitar to Rick Nielsen. He gave, road manager gave me $400, but we got to hang out backstage and watch the concert from side stage. And so when they played Clock Strikes 10, Rick Nielsen played the guitar that I sold him on the last track, on the last song. So it was pretty cool. Of course, I didn't bring a camera to take any pictures. All I've got's the CD to say, "Hey, here's their signatures," and that's all I've got. But that was definitely a highlight. That was a perk at working at a record store,
I bet you wouldn't trade that experience for the 3
No,
or
I
4
wouldn't.
grand you could get now.
No, I would not. But that was the highlight. Other than going to the NAMM show a couple of years, we just basically just took care of the, Marion, Ohio people, it was nothing big, but I mean, the fact that Rick Nielsen came down and went through and was looking for guitars, that was pretty great.
That's
Thank
incredible.
God I had something to sell him.
That's awesome. Grant's Rock Warehouse. Thank you very much.
There you go.
And Todd, I'm going to throw it over to you next. Tell us about your record or music store experiences.
Okay, well, I worked at Turtles Records and Tapes in Atlanta, Georgia. Turtles sort of started out, they copied Peaches. Peaches was also opened in Atlanta. And so Peaches had Peach crates that kept albums in, and Turtles had Turtles crates. And but Turtles ended up being a pretty big chain. I think there was over 100 stores at one point. It started in 1977 and it went out of business. Well, it's changed hands a couple of times. And in 1993, it got sold to Blockbuster and became Blockbuster Music, and then almost immediately closed. But anyway, so Turtles was locally owned, and it got to the point where they had so many stores that they actually had a warehouse and a main office and stuff like that. And we would get to go to the main office sometimes and hang out and talk to the buyers and stuff like that. My manager had worked at the chain at the very first store, like pretty close to 1977 when it opened. So he knew a lot of people in the company. But they had these shirts, and this is a reproduction, but I still have the first one that I got when I was a annoying customer. I really love this one because this is Supertramp Paris on the back. But I still have all of my friends. The man who was my manager is still a friend of mine. And when I was a kid, when I had my first job, I was 16 years old, and I used to go to the Turtle store before the one that I worked at even opened. There was a girl there who worked there. And I used to work at a grocery store, and I used to bring my tips. So I would bring like a pocket full of change and just dump it out on the counter. And she would, count it out and let me use it to buy records. And she and I are still friends. Hello, Camille. I'll have to send you the link to this. But anyway, this is, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is me with my 80s hair in front of a XTC Skylarking display that I made. And that's probably about 1987. I worked there from 1983 until 1988, and mostly in Marietta, Georgia, but I went to school in Athens at University of Georgia. And so when I was at school, I would work at the Athens store, and then sometimes I would come home on weekends and work at the Marietta store. But at the Athens store, one of the people that used to come in was Cindy Wilson from the B-52s, and she was painfully shy. You'd say, "We loved your album, Cindy," and she'd be like, "Thank you." And at the Marietta store, Don Barnes from 38 Special lived nearby, and I think that's his name. I meant to Google that. Is that his name, Don Barnes? The guy
Don Barnes, you're right.
Yeah. And he used to come in and drop a couple $100 once a week. He came in the same day. I think he came every Wednesday. And Mike Mills's dad, Mike Mills from REM, his dad lived nearby, and he used to come in. And when this was probably about 1984, when REM was, just only had a couple albums out, and occasionally we'd get 45s of REM of like South Central Rain and stuff like that. And so we would save them for Mike Mills's dad, because we wouldn't get a lot of REM 45s. And so when he came in, we would try to figure out, anything that had Mike on it that we got, like an import or something like that. We'd save it for him so he could buy it. We sold tickets, and that was always fun. We developed this great scheme on how to get really good tickets. We would, there was a 10 ticket limit for everybody who got in line for tickets. And so what we would do is we would go to the first 10 people in line. We would ask them how many they wanted. And so if the first person in line said, "I want 4," we would get 6. And then my manager would work the ticket computer. And as the tickets spit out of the printer, he would tear off 2 of them and throw them on the floor. And so if the next person wanted 6, we'd get 8. The next person wanted 2, we'd get 4. And then once all the people were gone, we would pick up all the tickets off the floor and divide them up amongst ourselves. And that worked really well until some of the management said, "We're getting complaints from some customers that they're seeing you guys walk past them to the second and first row and third row. And so we had to kind of watch it from there. I remember that we used to, there were a couple of things that I remember as far as records that sold really well. I remember when Thriller came out, Michael Jackson Thriller. And this wasn't even when it came out. It was like a year later, like at Christmas time, it was still popular and it was going multi-platinum. We would open up boxes of Thriller cassettes and they wouldn't even get priced. We would just, like at Christmas time, we'd just hand them out to the people in line because we knew that's what they were there for. I remember when Paul McCartney's album, Pipes of Peace came out, it had Michael Jackson on it. And I remember, I don't know why I remember this so well, but I remember opening the box and a line forming behind me. I was sitting on the floor opening the box and I was just taking the records out of the box and just handing them to people. And so whenever anybody has something bad to say about Pipes of Peace or gives it a bad review, I always think of that. I always think, I remember when that sold out of the box. But one of the funnest things about working in a record store was that people would come in and ask really silly questions. People would come in and they would say, they wouldn't know the name of a song and they would say, what's that song that has love in it? You know, something, love, I love you, something. And so you'd have to explain to them that, you know, that doesn't really help. I remember at one point there was a little girl that came in and we used to love hearing people try to sing songs to us. And there was a little girl that came in, she must've been 4 years old. She had pigtails and she wanted the song Chocolate Monkey. We said, I'm sorry, I don't know what that song is. And so she proceeded to sing Shock the Monkey, only it was Chocolate Monkey. And my gosh, we had that. We had Shock the Monkey. And it was fun. I worked there right in the middle of when New Age music was really popular. So it was fun hearing people try to pronounce Andreas Vollenweider and Mannheim Steamroller. And so you can imagine how people used to butcher those names. But Turtles was a really fun experience. And it was, through it, I got to know some of the label reps. So label reps would come in the stores and they would deliver posters, and sometimes they would make displays, and sometimes they would, you know, get us to make displays. And so I befriended a guy that worked at Warner Electro Atlantic at the office they had in Atlanta, and he used to let us come over there about twice a year. And there was a section of the warehouse where they had just open boxes of promos. And so you would just go down the line and he would just hand you promos. Oh. And so I still have some records that were handed to me. Let's see what else. I got to meet some famous people. I got to go. The only one that comes to mind is occasionally there would be listening parties, and I remember going to a Peter Cetera listening party and meeting Peter Cetera. Peter Cetera was which was a big deal for me because I was a big Chicago fan. And
they hand out pillows at the door for that listening party.
What's that?
They hand out pillows at the door for that.
It was funny because he yelled at me because there was a meet and greet line, and I went through the meet and greet line and I had him sign I should have got that. It's somewhere. I can't find it. But I had him sign like an album flat. And the lady who was my assistant manager organized the event, and she was too busy. There was like catering and everything, so she couldn't get in the line. So she handed me something for him to sign, and I got back in the line. And I was the last person in line. And when he saw me, he said, "You've been through here already." And I had to calm him down and tell him that, you know, can you please sign this for the woman who organized the event? And then of course he felt bad, like he should have. But I think that's everything I've got. I eventually what happened to Turtles, it was really sad. They got some management that came from other retail establishments, and they eventually got somebody who was really high up in the chain of command that came from Winn-Dixie, the grocery chain. And he thought that there was too much nepotism and that there were too many people who worked at the chain for too long. And so his plan was to figure out a way to get rid of the people that had worked there a really long time and we're making lots of money. So that's what ended up happening to me, was that I was there from 83 until 88. And it doesn't seem like that's very long, but me and my manager and a couple of other people that I worked with got laid off. And and so that's why I stopped at working there. But after that, I worked at Coconuts, which was another store, for about a year. And Coconuts was part of the Trans World music chain. So it was like big record. And Trans World was like what was it? Tape World and Record Town and Coconuts and a whole bunch of chains from all over the country. And this is a picture of me in front of my Morrissey display that I made at Coconuts. And that was pretty much the end of my record store career in 1988. But we had a lot of fun. I bought a lot of things at a discount and got a lot of promos. My manager basically opened everything. And so, so if he wanted to hear it, we opened it. And so we had a play stack that was, like you can't even see, but it was probably like, we probably had 100 open records under the counter. And so if anybody, but it worked. If anybody came in and said, I want some piano jazz, we had some, we'd play it, and we sold a lot of records that way. But I'm sure it ended up in our shrinkage reports for how much merchandise that we actually opened. But it was great fun.
Very cool. Where can we find you?
You can find me on the Contrarians occasionally, on Grant's Rock Warehouse and Ryan's Vinyl Destination, and Peter's channel, Rock Daydream Nation. And I occasionally appear on Rush Bands too.
Awesome. That was a very interesting story. Thanks, Todd. And I hope, Jamie, you were taking notes when he was talking about how to scam tickets.
Yeah. The next time I do something like that, yes.
All right. I'm going to throw it over to you, Pete. Tell us about your record or music store experience. I know a couple of folks might have to take off right at 8 o'clock. So sorry if that's a little jarring, but take it away, Pete.
All right. Thank you. Wonderful stories that everybody's told so far. Mine is a little bit different. I was on the opposite side of things. I moved to Denver in 1988 from Chicago and was playing 6 nights a week as a musician, and wanted to do something during the day, but certainly didn't want to do something remedial and ordinary and boring. So I went into Laserland. Laserland was a chain at the time of high-end CD, Laserdisc, home theater installations, and started a customer service. It was 2 brothers who owned the place. And so we had full downstairs theater rooms, big screens. One side of the store was all laser discs and the other side was all CDs. No LPs and no cassettes. So after about 2 or 3 months, the one brother left. Well, he was the audio buyer, and the owner knew I was a musician. And he said, "Do you want to take over as the audio buyer?" I go, "Absolutely." So I started doing all the buying and all the merchandising and all the ordering and everything for the store. And that was probably one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. The first thing was to just go through the entire store's inventory, see what we had, see what we didn't have, fill in gaps. It helped to have been collecting and a musician most of my life. So bands' catalogs were pretty much on recall. And so you could just go through and go, well, I'm missing this, I'm missing that. And you'd start to bring things in. And, in 1988, which dovetails right at the end of what Todd was doing, the CD world was changing very, very rapidly. And we have to remember that there were not a lot of the records that were on vinyl had transitioned to disc yet. There were a lot of albums from a lot of bands that hadn't made it to CD. And a lot of those were high profile bands. And the other problem is that most of the there was such a rush to get the software out because the hardware people were so far ahead in pushing CD players over the software that they were rushed to be put out on disc. They were never really mastered or mixed for that high resolution. The audio quality was pretty poor. You know, at the time, you may not have thought of it that way, but you can certainly go back and listen to them now, and they're very compromised. A lot of tape hiss, a lot of analog distortion, and most of them were done from an LP master, not from a CD master. So there was always the hunt for a better sound and a better audio quality. And because we were a higher end store, you know, we could afford to bring in some of the more expensive CDs. So I started bringing in things like mobile fidelity ultrasound discs, half-speed mastering stuff, hooked up with a couple of importers out of New York. And the best day of the week was Monday, because on my fax when I got there was my list of all the new releases from the importers. And believe me, that was kid in a candy store. And all of a sudden you look through and go, wait a second, the entire Zeppelin catalog is coming out on Atlantic Japan. And you're like, one whole set for the store, one whole set for Peter. So, you know, I'd order one of each. So, you know, and there were a lot of higher end people who were searching for the higher quality recordings. A lot of the Chrysalis stuff, Jethro Tull, things like that, were much better sounding on Japanese label imports than they were in the US. So we started to bring those in. And as Todd said, two big new categories had exploded. New Age was monstrous. Windham Hill Records became absolutely enormous. Artists like Enya, the album Watermark, couldn't keep it in. And, you know, that started a whole new style of music and buying. And then GRP came out in the jazz world. And Dave Grusin, David Benoit, and now these are names that are just Eric Marenthal and Dave Weckel and John Patitucci and players like that, all were newly, and Diane Shure, were all newly introduced through GRP Records. And all of a sudden there was this whole new contemporary jazz collections that people were really starting to latch onto. And of course, now most of those names are household names in the jazz world, plus all the rock and pop stuff that was coming out. We had a debate in the store as to bring in classical. My choice to the store was to choose not to do it. We could order them as special orders only because as a classical musician myself and a collector, they're so niche. You look for such a specific recording with a specific artist, with a specific symphony, a specific conductor, that it takes up floor space, it takes up extra cash. And if someone was looking for it, you could get it for them. And so we decided not to go classical on that. There were a lot of things I was kind of proud of, if I can kind of toot my own horn. What we did is we set up a system that we had our distributor, Baker and Taylor, was right in Denver. So we made an arrangement that I would show up to their place every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, pick up my main order on Monday that I had put in over the weekend. And if we had any special orders that came in, we'd call and add it to my list and I'd pick it up. And so it was never more than one day before a special order came in and a customer had their disc the next day. And so from that standpoint, I was able to keep a much lower inventory on the floor cost-wise, because I'll use their warehouse. You know, I don't need to have it on my floor. They've got it in their department. I'll pay for it and it's already paid for and it doesn't cost me any cash.
Gotta go, guys.
Nice to see you, Jamie.
Yep.
And so we started to go through that. And when I started, the store was doing about 10,000 a month in CD sales. 6 months later, we were doing 25,000. So I was pretty proud of that. The owner wasn't too disappointed. and increased our margins as well. I lowered our costs, but increased our sales. There were so many great records, and I'm going to completely draw a blank. But, you know, I remember all of a sudden Bonnie Raitt wins a ton of Grammys, and all of a nick of time, you can't keep that in the store. You know, I decided what to play and what to open in the store, that kind of thing. And one of the albums we would always talk about that kind of got poo-pooed was Recycler by ZZ Top, which I will defend to this day. I absolutely love that record.
Oh my.
Absolutely love it.
Oh good.
And, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on. You know, there was the Slaughters. And of course, we had the promo poster of Mariah Carey's debut down in the office up on the wall. And, you know, that was okay. But, you know, music was really changing. A lot of the big, heavy artists were kind of in a lull in 88 through 91. It was a kind of a quiet time. Box sets became a huge thing. Every picture tells the story. Clapton had a box set, Zeppelin's first box set with the, you know, the field carvings on the cover. You know, so a lot of that was fun, but, you know, the week to week knowing of what was coming out and being able to look at an artist and maybe not recognize the artist, but if you could dig into it and say, well, look who's playing on it. Well, it's such and such. Oh, who's producing it? Oh, it's such and such. There's a connection, you know, where it helps to be a musician or a fan to know that kind of stuff. And you say, well, let's bring it in and see how it does. And so I had a great time when I was there, and it was hard to leave, but I had moved back to Illinois by that time, and never worked in a record store again. And so it was a great experience. And I always say to get paid to do something that I would do for free, you know, is a pretty nice perk. So it was a good time.
That's awesome. And where can we find you?
You can find me just randomly showing up on people's sites. You know,
It's random.
Just random, just all of a sudden out of nowhere. I've joined a couple of Peter K's now, which is nice. And I've of course been on Ryan's Vinyl Destination, and I'm on Contrarians here every once in a while. So it's just fun to be watching everybody else expand their horizons and get new shows, and you know, maybe I'll show up on some of those new ones in the future as well. So we'll see.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Pete.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd, Grant, Bicycle Legs, Ryan, Jamie, everybody who showed up tonight. I know you got to go, Grant, so if you just got to jump off, go ahead. I'm just going to wrap up
See you guys.
and say,
I'll
take
see
it-
you guys soon.
Take it easy, Grant. Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. Like and subscribe our channel. I thought this was a fun chat. Seemed like a cool, kind of interesting discussion when I found out some of the folks in our chats had worked in music stores and record stores and stuff like that. So I'm glad everybody showed up and shared their experiences. And if you want to like and subscribe us, go for it. We got TeePublic, Ko-Fi, Patreon, all of that good stuff. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.